Can you see screen share? Yeah, you should now.
Oh, wait, hang on. There we go.
Okay, so I'll try and do pyramid principle in action, and then we'll have a little bit more of a talk through it. So the whole concept of the pyramid principle is starting with the most important point first, and then giving logic and reason behind that point afterwards, and giving that logic and reason in a grouped form to make it easier for the brain to process and remember. So I've done an example of one. We will achieve more if we improve our written communication. So that is like the summary, the statement, the most important part. And that's like the top of the pyramid. And then underneath that, what's the logic behind that? Like, what's the argument? What's the backup behind that? So there'll be less mistakes due to ambiguity and confusion around what's being said. We'll be able to communicate faster and get more done in the day. By structuring our writing, it will better teach us to structure our thinking and become superior problem solvers. So there are 3 sub-arguments that are all then grouped under the key message. And then that can be further broken down into, okay, if I'm not yet convinced by this argument, let me have a little bit more information. And that's when you can start to go into the nitty-gritties of, we're working in a complicated business, lots of different things going on, a niche terminology, different levels of understanding of different areas of the business. People use terms totally differently or used to different processes, and we're all in different places, so it can be hard to communicate, and then it can be difficult to, it's not as easy as sitting in the same desk where we can really quickly just check in and clarify something. So if we can communicate better internally, we'll have less ambiguity, less problems, less need to clarify, and we'll be more efficient. Likewise, there's a huge amount of work to do, and if our communication style is really rambly or long, or we have to have loads of meetings all the time, or reams and reams of email, that just takes a lot of time. So figuring out a way to do that more efficiently, we'll be able to get more done. Last but not least, in general, this concept of there's a lot of information, tasks, problems, there's a huge amount of stuff going on. If we can learn some rigid principles, it'll help us break it down in our thinking, and we can become a little bit more scientific, a little bit more rational, a little bit more logical, a little bit more accurate in how we think in every context, in all the context of work, by just practicing how we do it when we write. So that is sort of the key takeaway. To give you a bit more information, it's kind of like when Bilal often emails me, he writes TLDR, too long, didn't read. It's about cutting right down to the chase, getting to the very key point first of all, making it really simple. But then if it's a complicated piece of information or a complicated issue, being able to provide further information behind that. What I often find when I'm writing is that I write down all the thinking as I go, and then I actually have to completely rewrite the email in the different format. So I'll write why we should do something, and then I'll actually stop, rewrite it with the key piece of information first, and then the summary, the short summary afterwards. And essentially, that's really it. It's not super complicated, but it is something that unless you definitely think about doing, you won't do. But when you do it and you do apply it, you'll start to notice much clearer communication, and it'll be much easier for people to understand what it is you're trying to get across.
Okay.
Et voila.
That was good.
Any? Yeah, exactly. Any questions?
When would you use this? Is this just for email communication? Does this any way reflect when you write a blog post?
Yeah, so this is primarily for email communication and internal email communication. I think that sometimes the principle of just going with the core and then giving the information under it isn't suitable for communicating with clients. Sometimes they need it to be a little bit more helping them lead into the conversation and buy in. It sort of depends who you're communicating to. If you're communicating to someone that you both want the same thing, you literally just need to get the information over. You're not convincing them. If you're trying to write a convincing email, just doing a statement and then facts underneath is less useful. The history of this is it was developed in McKinsey by a lead consultant there, and they use it when they deliver their sort of managerial reports. But that's very much after they've been brought in and they've been sold, and then they're just delivering